pull. There was this whole church planting movement. We helped plant a church in Columbus, Indiana, several years ago. Saw a lot of cool things in that. It was an awesome season. And then I always had this thing in my mind of like, am I doing the right thing, or should I be helping a church or taking over at a church, stepping into an already established church that needs help, or is looking to hire a pastor or youth pastor or something like that. So I'm curious, as you started feeling like God was calling you to plant the church, that's sort of a little complicated with working at a church already. So like, how did that start to transpire? How did you feel like God was pulling you that direction versus like, oh man, I could take over from my dad at this, like Parkcrest is a pretty big church, and with a lot of thriving ministries, a lot of great infrastructure, a lot of support. So like, what did that process look like when God started pulling you that direction?
I think there's a couple of things that would attribute to that. One of which is when we were in college, they would do like emphasis weeks, like missions emphasis week or church planning emphasis week. And they did a church planning emphasis week. And I remember that being the week that I believe God called me to one day start a church. And now I didn't know when or certainly how, but I knew eventually that was something he would have for me. But I think the best part of this transition of me starting a church was because I was a part of a very healthy, established church. So I believe healthy churches start churches. And so Parkcrest is a very active church, not only in reaching people through missions all around the world, but they're also very active in church planting in the United States. So they have a goal to start a new church in the United States every 5 years. So they're constantly praying over who would be the next one to go. And then on top of that, it would be who's the next group of people from Parkcrest that would go with them to help get this church launched. So I knew God had called me to start a church years ago. And then I'm a part of a church that's praying about who are we going to be sending out next. And I think it's just those, like, being involved in those things that God has set up already that are healthy. I had a great youth pastor that was, I mean, even back before that, I had great parents that were like raising me to love the Lord in church. I had a great youth pastor that showed me what it looked like and grabbed a hold of me and helped disciple me. And then I went to a great Bible college, and then I went to a healthy church where they're actively looking to start churches. So it's just even the provision of the Lord having me in the right place at the right time. And because that's a vision of theirs, and it was something I knew God had called me to do. And, you look back on it and see, like, I joke about, like, I'd never worked for my dad. And the Lord's like, I've already got this set up. Like, you are going to work there because I've got you. You're going to be sent out by them one day to start a church. So just however he was playing that out. And so I think that's actually the role that played the most in me becoming a church planner, because when I went to Parkcrest to say, hey, I think I'm ready to start a church, it wasn't like, oh, this guy's out, he doesn't want anything to do with us. It was, great, this is the person we've been praying about. This is the next person to go out that is still a part of our church, will always be connected to Parkcrest. I love the hardest part for me is there's so many church planners, I think, that are like looking to leave their ministry to like go create something that they think is going to be greater or better. Rather than being sent by a very healthy church that you say, I really don't want to leave these people. I love these people and I love this church. And to be honest, I love the community. I had a great church, great friends, great gym. I just bought a house. Like, I loved living in Springfield. I loved my role there, but this transition has just been very healthy because thankfully the Lord has had me involved in healthy ministries.
Yeah, that is, I think, so much of church planning is reactionary, right, to what you are already in, to the culture that you're already in. And I know that was part of our story too, was sort of like, okay, I only have grown up in contemporary churches. Well, since I can remember, since, second grade ish, like or third grade, when I moved to Indiana, we never went to a church that sang hymns, nothing like that. It was always like more contemporary style music, small group ministries, the whole thing, right? Like when North Point and Saddleback and those all kicked off, like sort of that style, that new kind of style of church. but there were still things in it that I felt like we were planting as a reaction to. And, you know, some of that was just immature. Some of it, you get into it years down the road and you're like, oh, that's why it takes elders so long to make decisions. That's why we had to do this and this and this the certain ways, or we couldn't spend money on that because you had to pay the, you know, and just do you didn't understand it. Like some of it was just a lack of wisdom. And so I think for you, it's actually really helpful to have good, because again, I've worked at several churches, but by the time we planted, I had never been anywhere like really planted for a while. I had done worship ministry at a few churches, but it wasn't like I know the ins and outs of the business side of the church. I don't know the ins and outs of all the ministries and how they function, and the how the kids check-in works, and how that, you know, because the things just weren't relevant to me. I didn't care, you know, I didn't have kids. And so it's like, okay, I can sing some songs and I can help with like vision and different types of things, but there's some really granular things you have to learn, and ways of dealing with people, managing teams, like care, like legitimate just stuff that you can't learn it in school. Like you just can't until you're doing it. You have to learn it the hard way. And so I think, you know, school, I don't know, Bible college probably gets a bad rap, but it's like you just can't, they can't teach you everything. And so it's cool that you got to spend that time at the church. What was the first thing your dad thought when the first time you said, hey, I think God's called me to do this? Like, what would it look like for me to be the next person sent out?
I don't know that I know like what he thought. I didn't get a ton of like feedback from him on, I think he was excited for me, but also I had a mentor on staff at the church as well. His name was Sandy Huntsman. Actually this coming Sunday will be 1 year since he passed away, and he was on staff at our church, just incredible guide, helper. And I remember talking to Sandy, through this process, and I remember saying, Sandy, I'm not like getting a ton of feedback from my dad of this. I know he's proud of me. I know he's excited for it, but like, it seems very like tempered, you know, very like, and he said, Blake, you have to view it from his perspective. He is so excited for you, and he loves these next steps that God has for you. But that also means he's number one, he has a son that's moving away. And number two, he has an employee that's leaving, and he's got to replace that role, you know? So it is this, like, I can only imagine kind of the mixed emotion of like what you would feel in that moment of all of it. So I knew he was excited for me and all on board. But also, there were other guys on staff and the team there that were with and for me as well. And they were speaking a lot of that encouragement into me as well. I can't fully grasp like even what my dad was processing through, but I do know he's happy for me and proud of me for being here.
Yeah. What do you think was my biggest fear in life is actually, and I talk about I talk about this with my wife all the time. My biggest fear is that my 3 little girls are going to grow up and move away. And because my family is in town, my wife's family is in town, at least our parents, my siblings are in town. They were both over last night. My mom let us all 3 go on date nights with our spouses, you know, that kind of thing. And it's so great to just be around your family. So I know for you, like, one, moving is hard. Moving to a new place where, you know, very few people, maybe you have some contacts, but it's not like it was, right? There's not that comfort level with like, I can just stop over at mom and dad's house or whatever. But yeah, man, the thought that your kid, like, yeah, you're raising them to go out into the world, but then it's just got to be a different feeling when they actually do it. So fortunately yours are, you know, it's like, well, I'm doing what you trained me to do, you know, I'm going to be in ministry,